You are listening.
You're listening.
You are listening.
You're listening
To a TVO Today.
To a TVO Today.
To a TVO Today.
TVO
Today
podcast.
A listener note, the following podcast contains coarse and discriminatory language and sensitive themes which may not be suitable for younger audiences. Listener discretion is advised. Previously on The Oath.
I just happened to look online and I just Googled Melvyn Iscove. Bam! I could not believe what I saw. What? I mean, what? I did not imagine any of this was possible.
He had invited me to his home, and we were in his bedroom, and we were getting undressed, and I saw myself in the mirror, and I thought, this isn't who you are.
When did he introduce you to Dr. Edmund Bergler and his theories?
I would say within the first 3 months. The fact that he had written the foreword to his book suggested to me that he was a student of Bergler, lock, stock, and barrel.
So look at this book. The title is Counterfeit Sex, Homosexuality, Impotence, Frigidity. So I guess Iscove gave one of them that book.
So one of the questions we're going to have to look at down the line is it appropriate to give Bergler's material to patients in this day and age, or even in the late 90s, 2000s?
Bergler's theories about homosexuality, I think, were part and parcel of conversion therapy. He claims to have cured a number of homosexuals over the years. I even asked Iscove if he had cured any homosexuals of their quote-unquote condition.
Last spring, I discovered an old audio recording from a 1958 lecture at the Great Hall of the Cooper Union. It's a famous venue in New York City that's hosted some of the biggest names in American history, like U.S. Presidents Abraham Lincoln, Theodore Roosevelt, and Barack Obama.
We continue with our program on psychological aspects of creativity.
The featured speaker on the tape was a prominent psychoanalyst with an impressive resume. Listen for it. You might recognize the name.
Been a lecturer here in New York at the Psychoanalytic Institute. He's a member of a large number of important societies and has published about 240 papers in at least 11 different countries of the world. Delighted that he has been able to come back here to Cooper Union to speak on our topic, Dr. Edmund Bergler.
Thank you, Professor Fairchild, for your friendly introduction. Ladies and gentlemen.
This might sound strange, but producer Brendan Leffler and I were really excited to hear Dr. Edmund Bergler's voice. We had been searching for any trace of him for a long time. Dr. Bergler's name came up a lot in Dr. Melvyn Iscove's hearing. So we wanted to learn more about Bergler to get a better sense of how his theories actually work. Finally, we found the audio buried in the online archives of the library at Buffalo State University. Over the decades, Bergler's reputation has pretty much faded to dust. We would never have heard his name if not for Dr. Iscove. Other than the books Bergler wrote, we can't seem to find much information about him. What we did find, though, is a small group of loyal followers who were eager to talk. But there were a couple of things they weren't really happy to talk about.
I just don't want to discuss what Bergler wrote about homosexuality. I just thought he was somewhat misguided there.
When you came across the CPSO judgment, or rather the whole Iscove being in the news.
Yeah, my first reaction was, oh shit.
Why?
Well, it's just a body blow to the world of Bergler.
For TVO Today, this is The Oath. I'm Krisha Collier. This is episode 3, The Berglerians. On a windy afternoon in May 2023, I'm walking up to Roger Hollander's house. He's one of a handful of Berglerians we could find, and luckily for us, he lives in Toronto. I found Roger through a blog he wrote about Berglerian psychoanalysis and how it helped him. As we sat down in the living room, it's obvious he's kind of a Bergler connoisseur.
Yeah, in fact, if you turn around, you'll see a pile of my Bergler books.
Wow.
That's not all. I have some more downstairs.
By my count, there are at least 12 books stacked on the table behind me. Roger's been a patient of Berglerian therapy for more than 40 years. For the record, Iscove was not his therapist. It doesn't seem like Bergler's methods are used in clinical settings that much anymore. So I asked Roger to run me through how the treatment works, as he learned it. Sitting in his faded recliner, he gives me a sample, reciting what is known as an interpretation.
Okay, here we go. It's 5-layer interpretation. Layer 1, I wish to be passive, a gimme. I wish to be and feel refused, beaten, hurt, rejected.
As Roger recites the interpretation, I flip through the handouts he's given me. They're old and weathered, definitely written with a typewriter. The pages are filled with sayings, almost like a mantra. A big part of it deals with what Bergler called psychic masochism.
I'm trying to get the right language. Reproaches me for the masochistic wish to be and feel refused.
The goal of the interpretations, as Roger was taught, is to identify the underlying cause of his unhappiness in the moment, so he can consciously choose to break the cycle and move past it. Roger suffers from chronic pain and mobility issues. He says the sayings help him cope with it.
The whole idea is to alleviate suffering. That's why you go to a therapist, because you want to alleviate suffering.
Does it subside the anxiety? Does it subside the frustration?
I have to work hard not to feel sorry for myself. Any feeling of pity, it takes care of that. Because I just rest and say, it's my reality.
Hello?
Hi, is that Peter Michelson?
Yes, it is. Hi, Brennan.
Hi, how you doing today?
Bergler's work is complicated. So to get a clearer picture, Brennan reached out to Peter Michelson, who is a mental health counselor based in Michigan. He's been a follower of Bergler since the 80s.
I feel like I've sort of been a translator of Bergler because it's really difficult to read him in the original.
The way Michelson sees it, people unconsciously replay unresolved emotions from childhood, feelings like being deprived, helpless, rejected, abandoned, and betrayed. Those feelings don't just magically go away when you grow up. Michelson says Bergler's analysis helps people recognize and overcome those self-destructive patterns. It's just like what Roger was talking about earlier.
Especially neurotic people, but even those of us who are relatively healthy can still have times when we get tangled up in those kind of emotions and struggle to free ourselves, to get beyond it, and not to have those kind of painful feelings linger.
Michelson uses this treatment with his clients and on himself too. For years, he had been struggling with his own issues. He says other types of therapies he had tried weren't getting the results he wanted. Then he came across a therapist who used Berglerian methods.
Somehow it felt like I wasn't getting to the heart of the matter. I believe the Berglerian approach helped me to go deeper, clear up a lot of the more neurotic symptoms that I was struggling with.
What was it about Bergler's theories that you've essentially committed a good portion of your life to?
Well, basically that it works for me. It works for me. My biggest areas of conflict have been in marriages. I've had 4 marriages. I was married to good people, and yet there was a lot of conflict.
I've been speaking with Roger on and off for quite a while. He's had a really interesting life. Roger is American. He became a political activist in the 1960s when he was a student at the University of California at Berkeley. He got involved in the civil rights movement. He protested against the Vietnam War. Later, after a series of twists and turns, Roger ended up in Canada. That's where he was introduced to Berglerian therapy. It was 1979. A romantic relationship had gone sour. He had a really hard time getting over it.
It was very traumatic for me. I had a lot of emotional pain over it. And we remained friends, and she said she had a really good experience with a physician who did psychotherapy.
Turns out the doctor Roger went to see was trained by Dr. Benjamin Wintraub, who you may remember was also Iscove's mentor. In fact, Wintraub's name appears in the handout I'm holding. And that's the thing about Berglerians. It's kind of like that Hollywood game, 6 Degrees of Kevin Bacon. Except in the world of Berglerians, there usually seems to be only a degree or two of separation between them. It's a pretty small circle. We saw it again with Michelson. He told Brennan he'd also been in contact with Wintraub.
I exchanged letters with him maybe 30 years ago or more. He invited me to do some sessions, but I already had my own therapist in that regard, so we never did meet. But from what I understood, he was quite a gentleman.
Wintraub and Iscove must have thought Bergler's work was very important because they seem to have put in a lot of time to keep his legacy going. You see, the two of them immersed themselves in the Edmund and Marianne Bergler Psychiatric Foundation, a U.S. charity dedicated to preserving Bergler's ideas. Wintraub started a similar organization in Toronto. Eventually, Iscove would become prominent in both.
He was a giant in the Bergler world. He wrote the introduction to some of the books, and so that's how I knew him.
Iscove had actually quite good material there and describing Bergler's work pretty accurately. So I had actually rather admired him. I didn't know him at all, hadn't spoken to him.
Like Iscove, Michelson never met Bergler, and he didn't know much about Bergler's backstory. What he knew was similar to what's written on the bio page of one of Bergler's books. Essentially, he was from Austria and went to medical school at the University of Vienna. He worked at the Psychoanalytic Freud-Clinic for about a decade, starting in 1927. Bergler fled to the United States in the late 1930s when Nazi Germany annexed Austria. He set up a private practice in New York City, and he died there in 1962 at the age of 62.
It's just absolutely amazing. Someone would write in hundreds of articles in professional journals and have an obit when he died in the New York Times, but nobody wanted to touch his stuff, you know.
Why do you think it is that no one seems to know about who he is?
People just have an instinctive aversion to hearing about the possibility that so much self-defeating activity would be going on inside us without us being conscious of it. It's just so offensive.
Plus, the elephant in the room we haven't mentioned yet, Bergler's being in the forefront of believing that you could cure homosexuality.
To be fair, Bergler's work is about more than just sexuality. For example, he's widely credited for being the first person to coin the term writer's block. But still, sitting here with Roger, I'm curious how he makes peace with some of Bergler's outdated views. See, Roger considers himself an ally. He says years ago he was the executive director of an agency that advocates for 2S LGBTQ+ communities in Toronto. How do you reconcile his theories with your own code of ethics?
Bergler's work had to deal with suffering, helping people who are suffering. It was generally thought of in those days that if you were gay, you were suffering. My guess is that Bergler looked at that and said, well, I'm going to apply this to homosexuality. Because he applied it to writers. He applied it to all forms of sexuality. There's a book on gambling. The fact that he used that methodology to deal with homosexuality, to me, doesn't negate the legitimacy or the efficacy of the methodology as I used it on myself.
I mean, it's hard to speculate given we've never met him, but there is still a bias that he would have had towards homosexuality in order to interpret.
Yes. Yeah. Yes, of course.
It's a bit of a touchy subject for Roger. He firmly rejects Bergler's views on homosexuality. So does Michelson. He really didn't want to talk about it at all.
So you don't want to talk about his theories about homosexuality because...
No.
Yeah.
No. I basically disagree with what he wrote, and I'm unhappy that he did get into that material, and I really don't understand it.
Do you think that Bergler would have changed his mind, changed with the times?
Oh, I think so. As I understand it, he was quite a compassionate person.
You are quite personally invested in Bergler's legacy. Is that fair to say? Is that because he helped you so much back?
Yeah.
Okay.
And also because I see how it is benefiting my own clients.
But Bergler did seem to write a great deal about homosexuality. Time magazine wrote features on him at least twice in the 1950s. Both articles summarized Bergler's findings on the subject. One was about his book, 1,000 Homosexuals, Conspiracy of Silence or Curing and Deglamorizing Homosexuals. On the inside jacket it says, if treated appropriately, homosexuality has a, quote, excellent prognosis and is curable in the short period of 8 months in psychiatric psychoanalytic treatment, provided the homosexual inwardly wishes to change.
Now, what is a homosexual? If you ask a homosexual what he is, he will tell you.
Even at the 1958 lecture in New York, which was about creativity, Bergler brought it up. Just a heads up, the next bit of tape could be upsetting.
If you can imagine the worst heterosexual couple you know, then you have a faint idea what the best homosexual couple is. Why? Because they are constant conflict of injustice collecting, of masochism, with the result that after a few years these people give up living together and are going cruising, as they call it, meaning 5-minute relationship of constantly changing nature.
And there's more. He goes on to tell the audience that gay men are, in reality, simply scared to death of women. As a result, they run in the other direction, towards the same sex, looking for safety.
If you tell this to a homosexual, he will be absolutely furious with you and will say that you don't understand him, that it is all nonsense, that homosexuals are just homosexual and nothing else. They are not. They are fugitive from women and scared to death of women.
Of course, hearing all this today is alarming. But Bergler's analysis wouldn't really be as big of an issue if it stayed in the past. The only reason we're talking about him is because of Iscove. And we can't help but wonder how Bergler's methods influenced Iscove's behavior with his two accusers, if at all.
I just can't see any connection at all with Bergler's work, and there's nothing that Bergler wrote that would account for why Iscove would allegedly do what he's accused of having done.
But you see, I don't see any link. I think it's a coincidence, just an unfortunate coincidence, that there was a sexual abuse case involving a Berglerian analyst. And Bergler happened to be Bergler practiced conversion therapy. We don't know that Mel Iscove did. There's nothing in that judgment that I read that suggested that he was practicing conversion therapy.
If there was a person in 2023, I'll use myself as a case example. I go see a psychiatrist, I'm struggling with my sexuality. I mean, if that doctor or psychiatrist is using Berglerian theories to help me deal with my sexuality.
Not with your sexuality, with your suffering.
Yeah, but even in your own words, just like a few moments ago, you said that Bergler was, in fact, doing conversion therapy.
And Bergler was wrong, and I don't condone it. And I think today, if he were alive today, he would admit he was wrong. But that doesn't mean what I experienced was wrong. It helped me.
My conversation with Roger was very interesting. It was the first time someone actually came out and suggested to us that Bergler was doing so-called conversion therapy. And he's right. The discipline committee that heard the allegations against Iscove didn't say he was performing it. It didn't say Bergler was either. Iscove denied any wrongdoing, which we will get into in an upcoming episode. But the committee did make a whole meal out of Bergler's theories in the decision. It commented on the fact that Iscove became evasive in responding to questions about whether homosexuality should be considered an illness or whether it could be cured. It questioned why Iscove refused to acknowledge he agreed with Bergler on these views, despite Iscove admitting he devoted his professional life to studying and applying Bergler's theories. Whether the committee intended it or not, the way the decision was written leaves an impression Iscove may have been wading into the conversion therapy pool. Still, that claim would fall outside the scope of the case. It did get us wondering, though, what was Iscove doing? It certainly raised a few red flags.
There's so much work that needs to be done to ensure that these practices aren't happening. A good deal of people who go through it get caught up in suicidal ideation because it doesn't work. Unless you're really good at denial and suppression. And that's not change.
To better understand so-called conversion therapy, we reached out to experts and survivors. They told us, even though it's now illegal, the practice is still happening in Canada.
It happens in homes, it happens in schools, it happens in doctors' offices and psychiatrists' offices. It's everywhere.
That's on the next episode of The Oath. The Oath is hosted, written, and co-produced by me, Krisha Collier. Brendan Leffler is a co-producer and writer. Sound design and editing by Damian Kearns. Editing and technical support from Matthew O'Mara. Theme music by Alison Leighton Brown. Special thanks to the Barry and Lori Green Family Charitable Trust, who made this podcast possible. For TVO, Katie O'Connor is the managing editor of podcasts and digital video. Lori Few is the executive producer of digital. John Ferry is vice president, programming and content. Thank you for listening.